What's up, my Degens? How we doing? We got a little special matinee today. We're doing a Friday show. I got tied up yesterday. Life happens, family happens. And obviously, if you're a new content creator, I think you should always put your family first, man. Take care of the people that love you, that are home with you. Make this the side gig, but, put everything you have into it, I guess, is what I can suggest to you. We got a special one today. We're doing a surprise party. So we're talking about all the Dynasty surprises that could be out there. This is going to hit for Dynasty. This is going to hit for redraft. It's going to just be, good information that you can carry over for this year, but also guys that you might want to stash and hope and pray. And we're going to kind of go over the reasons why we had these guys so high for this year. And they're going to be late steals, guys that maybe are rising right now, but ultimately you can get for free or could have gotten for free at some point. I have a special guest today. You can kind of see what we're doing with the overlay and who that might be. Before we get to it, let's start off the intro. Oh, baby. All right, here we go, man. So like I said, we have a special guest on today. If you are not doing the redraft content yet, you should probably start. I have the host of Fantasy Whiplash, Dynasty Degens' own, Samwise at Buy and Sell You. What's up, Sam?
What's up, man? How are you today?
Good, man. I'm excited to have you on, man. We haven't really popped off and done a pod in a while. So
no, it's been a bit. Yeah.
I've been watching you mold up Fantasy Whiplash and build that up from the ground. I love what you're doing. I love the stuff that you're doing, rotating guests now. It's just like it's coming into its own. It's getting its own little identity and it's got its personality. How you feeling about everything, man?
I feel really good, man. I think especially for us, it's really meant to be an in-season show. So now that we actually have football happening on the weekends, even though it's pseudo fake football, there's still a lot more to talk about with injuries and such. And then during the season, we'll get into waivers, starts and sits and all that jazz.
Yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, it's going to be a show that hits during the season, but I think it's nice to just get the groundwork going and getting set up there. So if you guys aren't watching or aren't tuning in yet, that's Fantasy Whiplash. So that goes live every Tuesday at about 9:15-ish, around there. Whenever you guys are going.
Let's call it 9:30, but during the season, I'd say probably 9 o'clock sharp in case we run a little long.
Yeah. I know that you guys killed it the other week. I think there's Colton. You went for an hour and a half on that pod. When you're going, man. There's no. I guess if you're feeling it, I love it. I love long pods. Podfather goes for 3 hours sometimes, and he just doesn't stop. So
often. Yeah, I think Colton and I have the same thing in common. We both just love to talk. And as long as we're not exacerbating the point, that's okay. But yeah, that's why it lasts a little while.
Yeah. Let's get into it though, man. Let's just, we got the chat going. We got some people in there. Sam likes to talk. Man. Hey, you're not wrong there. He definitely does. But it's not a bad thing, especially when you're doing content and you're creating stuff, fantasy football. But as we talked backstage, you don't want to talk about the same guy over and over again for an entire hour. I don't think people want to hear that. But we're not doing that today. We're talking about dynasty surprises. We're talking about guys that are going to hit for 2025. And they're not being talked about. They're not. I mean, there's still buzz a little bit, but I think we're underestimating these guys as a whole. And I'm going to pull up some graphics from our own Player Profiler. If you guys aren't subscribed to Player Profiler, it's a guest, great content. Go in there, use our promo code DEGEN, DEGEN, and you can get a discount on subscription there. So, like I said, we're using Player Profiler, and the first guy I'm talking about is Wan'Dale Robinson. So Wan'Dale Robinson, we saw him have his first fully healthy season last year, and honestly, it was a surprise to me. Like I kind of had him as a full fade in general, based off of his production the last couple of years. But in 2023, we saw him jump a little bit, 60 receptions, 525 yards. He added I'm not going to say doubled it, but he added a good 30% to that with 93 receptions and 700 yards. And that's a nice jump for me, especially considering they didn't have a quarterback at all. We're talking about the ghost of Danny Dimes, where ultimately he was cut from the team at the beginning of the year, and they had DeVito. They had, they were filling holes at quarterback, and he slotted in as the second option in the team with obviously Malik Neighbors there. And it's like, I think Malik Neighbors opens this up for him. I think Malik Neighbors helps him out because he's working. If you look at his stats right here, the slot work, he ran 32% of routes run in the slot. No, actually, 75% rate in the slot. So we had 640 slot snaps, which is incredible. That's great. Obviously, I think that's where he's going to live. Targets at 140. I think this only improves. I think this only is going to show that he's a red zone target as well. 18 red zone targets. And that's considering that the Giants didn't have a lot of red zone opportunity. Like most of the time they scored touchdowns was a deep bomb or a situation where it was going to Malik Neighbors. So the fact that he got 18 red zone targets on a team that was very inefficient offensively, I think that we're looking at, okay, so if we have Russ at the beginning of the season, we have Dart. We know Dart likes to throw it a little bit. We know Russ, at least at his age, he's still going to be, I don't know how I'm going to paint this as a pretty picture, but he's still an upgrade from last year at the guys that they had. I just think that he's going to improve on this. I could probably see Wan'Dale Robinson looking at almost 1,000 yards, considering he went 700 yards with nobody at quarterback last year. So, chalk him at 1,000 yards with 5 touchdowns. Very easily possible with Wan'Dale Robinson. I think people are sleeping on this guy, and I don't want to, if you can make a move to either grab him for ancillary pieces, I would probably prefer him. If we're looking at the board right now, I would take him over Demario Douglas. I would take him over, certain guys where you could tier off of. I think you could probably sell Marvin Mims for Wan'Dale Robinson plus. I think there's certain situations where you can go in and get this guy on the cheap with some value on top of that. Like I said, go for Wan'Dale Robinson. Go grab this guy wherever you can. He's not on any waiver wires, but I think he's definitely very easily tradable as far as dynasty streets go. Sam, you in or out on Wan'Dale Robinson this year?
Yeah, I think the most profound thing somebody said about Wan'Dale last year was it was the great PPR scam of 2024. Because he had just the most ridiculous amount of targets and only accumulated 700 yards. I don't think he could do that again if he tried. So yeah, I think the numbers have to jump. I think he had, I think 3 touchdowns last year. That's got to go up too, and they've got somebody under center that can move the ball. So yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, we're looking at the targets. It's like incredible, but these targets probably aren't that catchable. Like when you're breaking these targets down, they're not really. I see 12 targets, 14 targets, like. There's tons of targets here, but it's like, how many of those can you actually catch? Like he's got a couple 10 reception games. He's got a 7 and 11 one, but I think that you're right. It's got to improve, and the team hasn't really opened up the offense at all. There's nobody that's been an addition that's going to essentially take up, I just can't imagine anybody taken into the target share that he has. I think that he gets open in the slot and he's got good separation, and there's nobody that scares me that's going to jump in here. All right.
Yeah,
So that's Wan'Dale Robinson.
I agree
go
with
ahead.
that.
All right. I'm going to pull up your guy right now. Sam, who are we going for right now?
We're going down to Arizona. One of my favorite players coming out of the draft last year came off the board. Obviously, they sort of delayed drafting running backs last season, but that wasn't for lack of talent. It was just the amount of talent that there was in that draft. Benson was the second running back off the board. You're talking about a guy that in college averaged 6 yards a carry, finished his last 2 seasons with 1123 yards and 1,124 yards, which is about 4.6 yards per clip last year on limited time in Arizona, And what really, really impresses me about him is, he was breaking tackles at like 20%, which is, it's about average, but it's considered good. You know what I mean? It's on the high end of average. He also goes about 3 yards before anybody touches him, or I'm sorry, 3 yards after being touched. And that's impressive too. So he's not just going down. I think 90% of his snaps are for positive yards. And that's a good thing in fantasy football. You don't have anybody dragging you down behind the line of scrimmage and costing you yardage. I think the most important thing to say about Benson is they knew what they were doing when they drafted him. Yes, James Conner is there. Yes, James Conner, just had he had greater than 1,000 yards once in 2023 before last season. And he's an accomplished pass catcher, but also last year was the first time he played 16 games. I have a really hard time believing he can duplicate that. He's just been injured, frequently throughout his career, whether it's just missing a game here, 2 games there. I think that when that happens, Benson is going to take the ball and, pardon the pun, run with it. And he might relegate Conner to a pass catching role a la Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I love this take. I love that you understand how they are using this guy, and they didn't see him as an immediate producer. And I think that's really where you see guys flourish, when they're able to sit behind somebody for a year, and they get their shots and they get a little opportunity. But ultimately, if they're still going to be a featured part of the offense and they don't get faded out or drafted over, just like Trey Benson, they didn't take anybody. They didn't change this offense at all, really. And we're talking about, James Conner having his true first healthy season, like by and large in a while. The fact that he did play the whole season and he did, do his Frank Gore impression where he kind of just stayed true and held on to the job. You're right. I don't see this happening 2 years in a row. I do like James Conner this year, but I like him, as a best ball guy, somebody that, you are going to see spike weeks for Trey Benson, I think, and you're going to see a situation where he might go down and Trey Benson might never give that job back. So I'm with you on that for sure. I love Trey Benson this year. I think that There's forgotten running backs, these guys like Blake Corum seems kind of dead right now. Like when you're looking at the class from last year, not a lot of pop, not a lot of guys that, might have value moving forward. Trey Benson was kind of viewed as almost the RB2, RB1 of this class last year. And he just fell into it.
I had him as my RB1 in that class.
Yeah. I mean, people just kind of like have a short-sighted thing going on with Dynasty. And I always say it. It's like you are killing people's value and you shouldn't be doing that, especially when we're looking at 2 or 3 year windows. I know that running back's tough, but we see guys that have incredible value moving forward that didn't do anything. Aaron Jones was tough. You just mentioned Aaron Jones, like the people really fade out short-term memory style nowadays. And it's good for us. Like we're talking about Trey Benson in the 12th, 13th round right now. I just took him in the Warrior Bowl, I believe, in the 13th round. I think that's just, it's easy money at this point.
I've got Benson on every one of my Dynasty rosters. And I drafted him in 3 of those and traded for him in multiple more. And it was to people or from people that you're mentioning right now that realized that Connor was having a great season. Benson wasn't getting the ball much, and I got him on the cheap. And I'm just going to take that all the way to the bank this season.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, especially if you got Benson a couple months ago. I think that his ADP has been climbing a little bit, but still, I think incredible value when we're talking about somebody that was drafted where he was, and they value him. They showed that they value him based on the fact that they had one of the deepest running back classes coming up this year, and they didn't draft anybody. They didn't say, nobody. You got to get somebody else. They're confident in Benson eventually being the guy that takes over this backfield. So I think you have to, take that confidence seriously and run with it at that point. All right, I'm going on to my next guy.
Please do.
We are talking about Cam Ward coming in and being a godsend for Calvin Ridley. We're talking about him probably, having some sort of, I'm not saying he's going to come in as Jaden Daniels, but I'm saying he's going to probably boost the value of all these guys around him. Ideally, you're going to see Calvin Ridley come back to maybe his Atlanta Falcons days and be that lead dog. And then some ancillary pieces when we're talking about Ian Amar and I can't even think of everybody on that team. There's just so many guys that they took in the Shamir Dyke and all these guys that I don't know how that shakes out. Restrepo's on that team. Who eventually becomes the wide receiver 2 of that team is up in the air. But a guy that I think is being not talked about enough is Chig Okonkwo. So Chig has flashed the ability to be that hyper efficient, guy that is athletic and he can block and he's got the ability. He's a big bodied guy, obviously 250, 6'2", but he has the ability to be a wide receiver. And he reminds me of, super athletic, smaller tight ends that can go out and they can line up as a wide receiver. They can go out wide. And we see this in his tape. We see him going out and running and being a big time red zone target. I think that's what he is for Cam Ward. I think he becomes his number 1 red zone target. And I think that's really what his value is going to be based on. I don't think Chig's going to come out and have a 1,200-yard season. I don't think he's going to come out and be like a Travis Kelce where he's going to get 12 targets a game. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think he's going to get upwards of 8 to 10 touchdowns this year. I think that he's going to be like that guy whenever they're moving down the field. Cam Ward's going to look for him in the end zone. I think that's where his value is going to be, and I think that he's going to get a massive boost because of it. And I think he's still going to be a target for him. I think he's going to be a consistent target. I think that we are looking at Calvin Ridley like, Yeah, I think Calvin Ridley's ADP has risen for this reason, but I don't see Chig rising up at anywhere. I think this team's going to be hungry for playmakers. I think Calvin Ridley's going to boost the value of everybody around him. I think that Chig is going to be the most undervalued tight end when we look back on this year, where we're like, okay, we could have got somebody that's a back end tight end one. Somebody that is going to be a trusted target for a rising rookie quarterback. And we see it all the time where these tight ends get hyper targeted because they're working in the middle of the field. And rookie quarterbacks, yeah, they might see the field eventually, but for the middle of the season, like until that jump in their assessment and stuff like that, they're only going through 2 to 3 reads. They can't go through the whole playbook. They can't go through the whole process. They find, guys that they are comfortable with. They find guys in the middle of the field. They usually get to the middle, and that's where they end most of the time. So we're going to be looking at Chig working in the middle of the field a lot. And I think that he's going to net positive value. He's going to get all these targets in the middle of the field. He's going to be the red zone target. I'm all the way in on Chig this year. I don't know if you have any assessment on this guy. I don't even have to go off his past years because, I mean, he's been working with nobody, but he consistently stays in this 50 reception, 500-yard range, 9 yards, 14 yards per reception. The touchdowns aren't there, but we're talking about, Will Levis and I can't even name all the quarterbacks that they've had in the last 3 years, but he's never missed a game, in 3 seasons. And then for tight end, that's very rare, for a tight end where they're banging and they're in the middle, they're in the trenches. All right, Sam, sorry. I've been chatting. I've been taking over the mic a little too long.
Oh no, it's all right. Yeah, I you know what? I like Chig, and I've actually ended up with him in quite a few best ball and redraft drafts this season. He just happened to be sitting there. As far as Dynasty goes, it's weird. He's made the rounds so often in so many leagues as sort of just a throw in. Maybe somebody is trading you one of their extra tight ends, so you give them Chig back, you know what I mean? But 50 for 500 is not bad if that's on the low end with working with very, very subpar quarterback play. So I think he can still be had for reasonably cheap in Dynasty in a trade if you can sneak him into a package where maybe he's your target, but you make it look like you're going for somebody else too, then you're getting a 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah. And we saw him kind of break out a little bit last season, like especially at the end of the season. I think that he was a trusted guy that people were going for. Like he was decent up until I mean, people are looking at the stat line right here, and I'm looking at it. So from week, 15 on 14, week 14, he's at 8 receptions, 59 yards, 9 receptions, 81 yards, 5 receptions, 42 yards. Like that to me is like he was coming into his own a little bit. He was finally getting a little bit of chemistry buildup. And I think that, when we have a quarterback that's going to be there the whole year, that chemistry is going to happen fast. Like we don't have to worry about him trying to adjust to a different quarterback every 2 games, 3 games.
Yeah, and I can't explain it, but people just tend to dismiss him. And maybe it was because of the quarterbacks that he was dealing with prior. But they're not going to be able to after this season.
Yeah, I agree. All right, man, let's get on to your guy right now. So this is your second guy. I love this guy too. I think that he's crazy value right now, but get into him, man.
Yeah, the value is absolutely absurd. I mean, in redraft, half the time you got to go find him in the ADP, and that is Jaden Royals from Kansas City. Jalen is his college stats were not, mind blowing by any stretch of the imagination. But you're talking about a hyper athletic guy, ran a 4.42 40. He's 6 foot, 194, so he's not, diminutive. I think the biggest endorsement I saw is, right at the beginning of training camp, Andy Reid came out and said, Jalen Royals can do all of the things that Rashee Rice can do. That's pretty mind-blowing endorsement for a rookie. And one of the reasons I expect him to pop off this year is because even though he's listed, in the second tier of the depth chart, depending on which you look at, some have him positioned behind Hollywood, some have him positioned behind Worthy, but he's learning all three spots. Which is important here, because when Rice misses 6 games or 4 games or whatever it is, likely in the meat of the schedule, Royals is going to be the one, I think, that they point to get involved. And that's not to say that his only value will be during that time, because we all know it's only a matter of minutes before Hollywood Brown's foot hurts again. If he's learning all the spots, then he's going to be a plug and play for the Chiefs, and probably a consistent play for fantasy managers.
Yeah, I like the call out, and we're talking about a team that, might not have Rice for 4 or 5 games or whatever the suspension ends up being. And I think that right now he hasn't been super active in camp. I think Royals has been able to essentially build some chemistry with Mahomes, and the idea of these veteran quarterbacks is you have to gain the trust. You have to be a guy like we saw it all these years with Brady, where it was like Brady just didn't trust you. You weren't getting the ball. I think that Mahomes is in that same build where he's got to know that you can be that trusted guy. Like, he's got to know that you can catch the ball in the situation. You know how to run your routes. You understand where the ball's supposed to be. And that all that time is valuable, and Royals is locked in as the wide receiver 4 right now for this team. Even if I'm not a big Hollywood Brown guy, but I think he's still going to be higher up on the depth chart to start the season. We're talking about an injury to Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice suspension. He's the wide receiver 2 of that team right off the bat. You know what I mean? Like, these two things happen at the same time. And that's not, the Rice situation is a lock. The Hollywood Brown situation, I don't want to ever wish injury on anybody, is a lock too. Can we be just like, I hate to say it, I hate to do this to guys, Hollywood Brown is never going to be healthy. He's never going to have a fully healthy season, and we have to finally just admit that to ourselves. If you're out there gassing up Hollywood Brown, best ball, maybe he might have a couple of good games. He might do this, but I will never put money on Hollywood Brown being a consistent guy for an entire season. I cannot get on board with that. I can't do it. And I hate doing that to guys, but we've seen enough, right? This is year, 6? I can't even remember. It's year 5. I think he was drafted in 2020, 2021. I'm sorry.
I feel like it's been eons.
I know it feels like forever, but it's been at least 5 years of Hollywood Brown, going through the motions and doing this to people where, he kind of lived off of that rookie year where he was almost fully healthy. And then, it's just not happening. It's not going to, man, the value of Hollywood Brown has been incredible over the years. I remember him being somebody that, had I don't know. I remember him being like a third, fourth round pick at one point in time when he was on the Ravens. So yeah, I'm not to go on a Hollywood Brown tangent right now, but yeah, I'm so in on Jalen Royals, man. I think that's a great pick. I think that people have faded him off of that landing spot. But I think that's silly. We've seen this burned into dynasty managers' brains so many times where, situations aren't fluid. And when you're looking at the depth chart, it's super important to look at that because he's with Mahomes and he's possibly going to be the wide receiver 2 at one point in the season. And it's easy money, right?
There's just too many opportunities for him to crack that lineup to ignore. Could you imagine if he and Worthy were on the field at the same time? All of a sudden, the speed of the game just got raised several notches. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do this year, and he's going to get the opportunities in redraft and best ball. He's way down in ADP. He's easy to get. I imagine in Dynasty, you're probably going to have to overpay for him because, when somebody's just drafted a rookie, they're going to hold on to him. If somebody's got roster problems or you've got a contender that's willing to dump him off in return for somebody that's a guaranteed starting wide receiver every week, you could make a move that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like they didn't have anybody to fall back on last year when they lost Rice and they were dealing with Hollywood Brown. And there wasn't the offense struggled. We saw Mahomes dip down and the lowest point of dynasty value I've ever seen with Mahomes. And he's going, I got him in the middle of the second round. I got him in the late second round this year, and that's in superflex. So it's like, I think it's silly. I think the write-off of Mahomes falling down a little bit is premature. I think that we see it all the time. We're in a bunch of chats together. We see trade Mahomes for this and that. And then, would you veer off Mahomes for guys like third, fourth tiers and stuff? And it's like, no, I don't, you can't fade a guy based on, he still had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, he wasn't, Mahomes, it's not like he was bad.
No. And now I think his offense is set up foolproof. If we're talking about an injury to this guy, then, they have guys they have a fifth, sixth option. And then they have Brashard Smith in the backfield that can be a wide receiver if they need to. And I think they're more fluid this year. They have options. They have ways of getting Mahomes, to get touchdowns, to get the ball out of his hands. It's going to be good, man.
I also
go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick before you move on. The other thing was last year, their defense was so good that they were not forced to force it, I guess, on offense. And this year, the defense is still very, very good. But you're talking about a team that just lost the Super Bowl, and there's a lot of big egos on that team, and they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder this year. And if the defense is holding the other team to 10 points, they're still going to try to put up 35 if they can.
I agree. I think that it's still going to be a high-scoring offense regardless, because I think that Mahomes hears people talking. I think that, the team in general hears people talking, that if you can limit them to a certain amount of points, then they can't win games. And that's really what, the buzz is around the league. And I guess, I mean, like, I know, like I'm in the league or something, but like, people are saying that if you can limit the team to a certain amount of points, Mahomes can't win games anymore. And I think that he understands, this is his legacy. And I people think about that, regardless of whether you want to believe it or not. He wants people to know that he's still a dog, that he's the guy,
Oh yeah.
And you're like, people don't care about that. He cares about that. He
yes,
knows. And yes, people have egos regardless of how humble they seem. Before we get into the next guy, though, I just talked about best ball a little bit. You and I are in the FastDraft app. We are in the Discord. We're always, jumping in rabbits and different, flex fours and stuff like that. If you guys aren't doing FastDraft, it is one of the best ball tournaments out there. I'm not saying it because, I'm affiliated or anything like that. Honestly, like I would not be affiliated with them if I didn't believe that this was one of the best ball tournaments out there. The best way to get in there. It just is the fastest way to do it. And I can't get into best ball and sit there for hours. And, I end up going to auto draft. I can't just sit there on my phone for that long. This is quick. You get in, you're done doing a draft in 7 minutes. It's incredible. There's no rake. There's no positional situations where you have to have a certain amount of guys or you can't have a certain amount of guys. It's just great. So we're going to go over this ad and then we're going to jump back into it. Hold on one second.
You asked, we delivered a full best ball tournament on FastDraft, but we do it the FastDraft way, and it's called the Rabbit, because of course it is. 20-second time clock, 15 rounds. These drafts, they take 20 minutes. That's it. So you get a lot of new people coming in and playing, get a lot of best ball bros playing, exploitable ADPs, no rake. It is the best EV in all of fantasy. You should just go to fastdraft.app, use code FAST. You get a $50 deposit match. These things are a blast, and it's the best use of your funds in all of fantasy.
Yeah, I actually said 7 minutes, 20 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever. It's all the same to me. At this point, you guys know my promo code. Sam's promo code is WHIP. If you want to use WHIP, use WHIP. If you want to use our promo code, DEGEN, DEGEN, you can get up to a $50 deposit match over there. So, if you guys aren't in the Discord, jump in there. Send me a DM, send Sam a DM, send the Podfather DM, whatever you want to do. Come in the Discord with us and just – whenever we need a certain amount of guys in the fast draft, and whether it's Rabbit or D up or any of those drafts, just, you send out a message on there. We're looking for 4, looking for 5, and you get the draft with us, man. It's fun.
That's
you can,
the best part.
You can go up against analysts. You can go up against everybody in player profile.
Yeah,
you're going up against these guys that do content for a living. Yeah. So you're going up against the Podfather. You're going up against me, Sam. We're going against all these guys. Theo, everybody that's in Player Profiler. You are going against these guys, and you're just saying, I know more ball than you. And it's the best way to do it, I think.
Yeah, and one of the best things about that Discord is if you have notifications on, you'll get a notification that says, we need one more for this tournament. You can immediately log in, join, boom, drafting right away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. You're not waiting around, you're just in a draft, boom, start it up. And it's so fast where you're not eating up any time. If you have a wife, girlfriend, whatever it is at home, and you're sitting there hanging out, watching a movie, you don't look like a jerk when you're sitting there on the phone for an hour and a half. You can bust out a draft, pretty quickly, and it's easy. And it's notifications on, you can tell when you're on the clock, when you're not on the clock. So it's very easy, man. All right, let's get to a couple more guys before we get out of here, man. So My next guy is influenced by his skill set, and we're talking about a guy that was probably faded for multiple reasons, like Woody Marks. And if I can get his full name, Jaquavius Marks. So Jaquavius Marks is somebody that I have been fully in on. If you look back on my videos, I've been on this guy for a full year at this point. I think my first video on Woody Marks dropped in October. We're almost full circle now. So I think that, the fact that this still rings true and that his situation's only getting more favorable. Woody Marks out of UFC. So he has played against some of the best teams and has showed that he is efficient. He is probably the most pro-ready guy when we're talking about a late round running back there is, just because of the fact that he has gone against NFL caliber defenses and has provided a great value. He has been efficient. He's been a workhorse. We're looking at the way that he plays. He's patient. He's got physicality to his game. He's somebody that, could be a workhorse at the NFL level. And we're looking at Joe Mixon not being ready for week 1, maybe not being ready for week 7 or 8. I'm not sure. That the fact that we haven't heard anything about him is kind of concerning for me. I hold a lot of Joe Mixon in redraft and in Dynasty. But the fact that we haven't heard anything, usually when you're dealing with injuries, you get an update every couple days. You hear about Mixon progressing along in a walking boot, doing this, doing that. It's been quiet. It's been dead. We're not hearing anything out of Joe Mixon. I think that, we are looking at a situation where he could be a producer week 1 in some capacity. We're looking at, Nick Chubb or Woody Marks. I think Woody Marks at this stage of the game has more juice to his game. And Nick Chubb, I've seen the videos. He looks plodding. He looks like he weighs like 300 pounds, to be honest with you. I'm looking at a lot of videos where
it's time to hang it up.
He's looking like Eddie Lacy out there, where he could be a good goal line back, but I think they need somebody that's going to be a 3-down back, somebody that's going to be that bruiser. This is how that offense has been operating. This is like, at this point we're looking at, okay, so Woody Marks or Taj Brooks. I think that Woody Marks has the clearer path. And I think when we're looking at these guys, Taj Brooks is a physical guy. He's somebody but he's fighting for his life on that team. There's no clear path on that team. Woody Marks has the opportunity to see the field week 1. I think that you have to go with the guy that's going to have the clearer path originally, and then you can move off of the guy that you think is going to have more value eventually. So it's like you can play the game a little bit, but when we're talking about late round running backs, you want to get the guy that's going to – I would never take Pierce over James Cook year 1, but you could have taken Pierce over James Cook year 1 and then traded Pierce for James Cook in a first, and people wouldn't even bat an eye. They wouldn't have said, oh, that's a silly trade. They would have just said, oh, I get it. You want to go win a championship. And it's like, you got to play the game. You got to play the game in Dynasty. Even if you have the gut feeling that they're going to be more valuable, go for the guy that's going to get the value. And I think Woody Marks he's got the skill set to be an asset. He's got the path right now. He is looking at possibly being the RB 1A, 1B situation when we're looking at Chubb not really looking good. I'm not going to say he's not going to be efficient or anything like that, but I'm going to say he's not going to be efficient. I'm just going to say I don't think he's not going to be an efficient running back. He's going to be we need short yardage. We need somebody. He's not going to be the big play guy that they need. And this offense has been running on a fairly efficient running situation. Joe Mixon was like an RB1 last year. We saw for all the things that we saw in his tape and everything, like he was a set and forget it. Okay. Super producer last year on that team. So, somebody's going to jump in on this team and be that enforcer, that guy, that 3-down back. I'm going to take Woody Marks over Chubb as a bet right now. For anybody in the chat that thinks that Chubb's going to outproduce him, I would love to take that. But yeah, I'm in on Woody Marks for multiple reasons, and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. Before it was, is he going to make the team? Now does he have to beat out Chubb to be a producer? I don't think so. I think they're still going to work both of those guys in there. He doesn't have to beat out anybody now.
Yeah, I think I think it's Chubb if you need 1 yard. I think Chubb's going to be a goal line back. I think Chubb will still have. He's going to remind me of like a LeGarrette Blount or like man, who was? Oh, I'm thinking on the Lions. I love this guy. I can't think of his name. Give me the guy that Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams had 11 touchdowns. I think maybe Chubb has, if they can get on the goal line and then they just have Chubb vulture a touchdown. Like that was the most frustrating thing for Swift owners. I remember that. That was like the year where every time they got
to the goal line, Swift came out and Jamal Williams came in, and it was ugly, man. But it was funny actually when I'm looking back on it. I don't know. Maybe Chubb is that guy that has crazy value on touchdowns or something. I don't know, but I can't see him.
His efficiency last year with the Browns when he finally played was like I think he averaged 2.7 yards per carry. So it literally was like if you just need short yardage, that's your guy. But but you're not. He's not going to break away like he used to.
No,
he's not even going to come close.
I mean, he's had 3 major injuries like in the last 4 years. Like it's incredible.
And then they show him lifting weights, and all of a sudden people are falling all over themselves. Like lifting weights is not making cuts, and it's not running through defenders.
Yeah, I mean that ability. I mean, it's impressive. Like I see him with the tsunami bar, bending in half, squatting 700 pounds or whatever he does. But at the same time, it's like, you're right. That the different muscle groups, different tenants, sometimes lifting weights can ruin your ability to play football. Like you are making yourself so tight where you're setting yourself up for a tear or some sort of situation where your ligaments, you're just not. It's leg lifting is great for your muscles, but it's awful for like your joints and everything, man. It's not. I don't want to see him benching or lifting. I want to see him. Yeah, you're right. Cutting and cardio and that kind of stuff would get me excited about Chubb. Seeing him.
We're like doing a 3-cone drill.
Yeah, like agility drills and but I mean, we saw Zeke doing that with trash cans a couple of years ago, and that didn't work out too well for his outlook either. But let's do your last guy and let's get out of here, brother. Let's who you got for your sign off?
I will first say that I was very disappointed that you took Woody Marks because he was on my list, man. I'm grabbing him everywhere I can. And have been even before the Mixon injury. I was infatuated with him. I will say my last guy, I think, set himself up with a launching pad towards the end of last season, and he's ready to take off. And that is Ricky Pearsall from the San Francisco 49ers. He played in 11 games, but very sparingly through the first 7. Didn't have, I think he was averaging something like 3.5 targets a game, maybe if you add all those weeks up. And then when you get to his last, his last 2 starts, he really, really blew up, and that included his 8 for 141 against Detroit. And those last 2 weeks of the season, Pearsall really started to look like he could be a go-to weapon for this offense, and I think he's going to need to be because Ayuk is not coming back anytime soon. It's going to be mid-season probably. Even when he does, we saw what he looked like when he came back after not having much practice time last season. He's going to be rusty. And that's if he does make it back at the halfway point of the season. I mean, he's coming off an ACL. But you're talking about Pearsall's a 4.140 or a 4.41. 4.1 would be sick. A 4.4140, a 42-inch vertical, and in only 4 starts, had 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. across last season. And he's going to obliterate those numbers this year. Do I think he'll get 100 catches? I don't, because McCaffrey and Kittle are on that team. But do I think he's going to go over 1,000 yards? I absolutely do. Do I think he's going to go over 100 rushing yards? I absolutely do. They're going to use him in every way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of people pointing at Juwan Jennings as being the de facto number one wide receiver in that offense. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's Ricky Pearsall. In my opinion, he's probably destined for a top 20 wide receiver finish this year. If McCaffrey or Kittle go down for any length of time, he's got absolutely top 15 upside.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we're talking about a team that's going to be thirsty for playmakers. I know that Kittle is going to have a monster year, but you can only feed Kittle so many times before the defenses are going to adjust. So it's like you need to have that second, third option. And Ayuk doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the start of the season. And we don't even know what he's going to come back as, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be an efficient guy, if he's going to be a healthy guy, if he's going to be able to come back and be that guy he was 2 years ago. You know, it's going to be tough to project that. So I think that early on in the season, Pearsall is going to get peppered with targets. He's going to have good chemistry. I think Purdy's going to be looking for him. And I think that that's what you look for. That's really what I was talking about with Chig earlier in the show. Pearsall is going to get that same treatment. He's going to be a guy that gains the trust of Purdy and that they're going to be looking for each other. And I think that, you know, outside of Kittle and CMC, this is the one that you want to own on this team right now. And I'm going to walk back my takes on Ricky Pearsall. I didn't like Pearsall when it was, you know, Debo and Ayuk and CMC and Kittle. And it was like, I can't get behind drafting this guy in the second round when we're looking at somebody that might be, you know, and obviously the situation can change. And that's really what I need to remind myself. And it changed fast. Ayuk got injured. Debo kind of fell off a little bit, you know, and CMC is still there. But, you know, we saw him deal with the injuries that he has been dealing with off and on, not the same ones, but, you know, he's a physical guy. He plays a certain level of football. And with that comes a lot of bangs and bruises. And it's not to say you know, one of these guys could go down and Pearsall is going to be a set it, forget it wide receiver one for those games when
I agree.
If they're missing Kittle or CMC, I think Pearsall is going to be the number one target. So it is easy to get this guy where he's at. I think that, you know, I don't know if I'm on board with a top 20 wide receiver, but I could see like top 25. I could see him being like in that range of a Jameson Williams last year, where he goes over 1,000 yards and, you know, he edges for like 7-8 touchdowns or something. I mean, I think that's definitely possible. I don't know if he's going to get a million targets, but I think that he's going to be efficient with the ones that he gets. I think that it's going to be, you know, I had a sell Purdy take last week. I don't know if I love it or I hate it. I'm not sure if it makes sense now that I'm talking about Pearsall to this degree, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's worth it to say that, you know, he started the final 2 games last season that were, for all intents and purposes, meaningless. And, you know, had, you know, averaged 9. So 10 targets in one game, 8 in the other, on starts. So I think he can start matching those numbers. So I think he's going to get over 70 to 75 catches. No, certainly not going to reach 100, but he's going to crack that 1,000-yard barrier and make a lot of people's face red.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I love everybody that you listed. I think that we're in on all of our guys today. Let's sign out of here, man. Tell everybody. I dropped it earlier in the show, but tell everybody when Fantasy Whiplash drops, what to expect this week, and then I'll let people know about the other shows, and we'll sign out of here.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Buy and Sell You. It says Samwise on it. I write for Player Profiler. You'll be able to see some articles coming up very soon. And Whiplash airs every Tuesday night on this channel as part of the Degens network at 9:30 p.m. So 9:30 on Tuesdays. And, now that there's actual football, that's what we're talking about. We're not recapping games. We know you've seen all that, but we're delving into what the injuries mean, what the depth charts mean, what rookies are actually trying to make a roster, and some positional battles, RB2, wide receiver 2, etc. So it's a lot of fun, and we do it all with a little tongue in cheek. So come have a good time.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, so that's Fantasy Whiplash. We're going every Tuesday night. We have Dynasty Degens every Monday night. We are looking at the Dynasty show going Thursdays. And then, we got a couple more things in the fire right now. So, Degens are cooking. We're always doing stuff. You can find shorts, all that stuff on Player Profiler now, on the YouTube, on the main channel, Dynasty Degens, X, all the stuff, man. There's so many different ways. The pod link is pinned to my profile, so you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, anything that you want to listen to. I appreciate everybody joining us today, and we will catch you guys next week. It's Nerd Boy and Samwise. We out.